Sadi Gimel Amabez. Let's just chazer from the Mishnah. Misha Yanasoi Dali Nashim. Lucky man, married to 4 women. Vames. And he dies. Well, that's why he died, because he was married to 4 women.
The last guy died at 3.
What?
Yesterday was 3.
This guy's lucky. Okay, so he's married to 4 women and he dies. So now the question becomes, who gets to collect the ksuba? Well, if there's enough for everybody, so then there's enough for everybody. If there's not enough for everybody, so then who gets to collect first? Or even if there's enough, so who gets to choose, or which properties, etc., etc. Harishayna kaidemes l'shnio, shnio l'shlishis, l'shlishis l'revius. So the first one comes before the second before the third before the fourth, because at the end of the day they collect their ksuvos in the order that they were married, because as they became married, the husband's assets became mishubad to the wives. But when collecting their ksuva, since there are other women involved, in general when a woman collects her ksuva she doesn't have to swear. Since there are other women involved, we want to make sure that, again, if there's not going to be enough, that the rightful owners are getting it, and even if there's going to be enough that the rightful owners are getting the right properties that belong to them. So at the end of the day, each one needs to swear that they did not yet collect their ksuva. So the Rishon swears, the Sheni swears, the Shlishi swears, and the Revi, however, does not swear. Ben-Nanis says, just because she was the 4th wife, she thinks that she's like the one that's better than everybody else. So she too needs to swear in order to get her ksuva. This guy is, forget about the guy that he's cool that he marries 4 women. He doesn't only do so 4 women, he marries 4 women in one day. So he marries all of them in one day. So in general, when you marry or you do things together in one day, so then whichever one came first. So then if they wrote in the ksuva, this one got married at 12, and this one got married at 1, and this one got married at 2, and this one married him at 3, so then we go based on the hours, and that's how they used to do it in Yerushalayim. They wouldn't just write the date, they would write the hours as well, and it's the same thing. Different dates or different hours, whichever one was first is first. However, but let's say they all got married at the same hour. He's a smart guy, he wants to save money on the marriage licenses, he just gets a deal 4 for 1. Fine, 4 for 1. Or it's not in Yerushalayim and they don't write shows, and they just write the date. So now there's 4 women with the same exact date with no hours. So now who do we do? What do we do? Ein sham elamana. Again, if there's enough for everybody, then we just split it up. But if there's only enough for not even 4 of them, so what do? We split up whatever's there, and we give it to all 4, because after all, we don't know who we married first, second, third, or fourth. B'mai kamiflagi. So where's their machlokas? So the machlokas in the Mishnah is a machlokas about whether the 4th one needs to swear or not. Does the 4th wife need to swear that she didn't collect her ksuva or not? 1, 2, and 3 definitely need to swear, because when they collect their ksuva, they're affecting somebody else. When 1 collects it, so she's affecting 2, 3, and 4 who can't collect the ksuva. If 1 and 2 get it, so if 3, there's not enough for 3, so then if 2 wouldn't swear and 2 wouldn't get it, then 3 would get it. The question is now 4 is the last one left. So 4 is only affecting the Baal, or the Baal's Yorshim. But again, we never swear when it comes to collecting a ksuva. So why should she have to swear? So vis-a-vis the Baal, none of these women are swearing. They're all swearing vis-a-vis the other woman. So 1, 2, and 3 I understand need to swear. But now that 1, 2, and 3 have collected their ksuva, so now it's time for 4 to collect her ksuva. So according to the Tanakhama, 4 doesn't need to swear, because she's not affecting any of the other women. They've already collected their ksuvas. According to Ben-Nanis, for some reason, the 4th one still needs to swear. And b'mai kamiflagi, what's this machlokas? So Amar Shmuel, so Shmuel says, Kegon shenimseis achas mehen sadeh she'eno shalo. Very interesting. So Shmuel says, I'll tell you why the 4th one needs to swear. Because it's possible that what will happen, all 4 of them will collect their ksuvas. Fine. After all 4 of them collect their ksuvas, it's going to be found that one of the earlier wives, 1, 2, or 3, collected a property that in fact never belonged to the husband. The husband gave them a property, very nice, he was so nice and generous. However, unfortunately, he gave a property that he already sold to somebody else. So now let's just use an example. Number 2 is holding a property that the husband already sold. So what happens?
Before they got married.
The buyer, before
he got married.
Was stolen.
Or stolen, fine. So now what happens? So now he sold it or it was stolen. Now the original owner or the rightful owner comes and takes it. Who does he take it away from? Number 2. So now number 1, number 3, and number 4 have their property. So now number 2, who should have gotten their property before 3 and 4, end up with no property. So what's the problem? What's the machlokas? How does that affect whether number 4 swears or not? Because now we're arguing about what the halacha is when a Baal Chov when a person that's owed money, when they go ahead and take something that doesn't belong to them. Now, when 3 and 4 took their properties here, they had no idea that it doesn't belong to them, but it's still the same halacha. Lamaisa, they took something, or at least number 4 took something that doesn't belong to her. Because at the end of the day, what she has now rightfully belonged to number 3, and what 3 had rightfully belongs to number 2. So again, we're not necessarily going to switch and take it away from number 3 to give to number 2 and number 4 to number 3. But now, Lamaisa, number 4 has a property, and that property rightfully belongs to number 2. So the question is, when somebody takes something that doesn't rightfully belong to them, but they've already taken it, so what's the halacha? So Tanakava savar masha gava lo gava. So the Tanakama holds, if you take something that doesn't rightfully belong to you, again, number 4 can innocently say, I didn't do it on purpose. Lamaisa, you gave it to me, but masha gava lo gava. When number 4 takes her property, so now when we need to go ahead and take it away from her, so we can take it away from her. So there's no reason for her to swear before she takes it, because Lamaisa, at the end of the day, she's never going to be affecting any of the other women, because if we have to, we'll just take it away from her and give it to number 2. However, ubenanis asavar masha gava gava. Benanis holds that once somebody takes something that doesn't rightfully belong to them, we don't take it away. So it comes out that if this would be the case, and they would take away the property from number 2, and now number 4 has the property, so number 4 would end up with a property, and number 4 will end up having collected a ksuva that at the end of the day affected one of the other wives. However, number 4 will be the only wife who collected a ksuva affecting the other wives without having to swear. And therefore, Benanis holds, since there's a possibility that down the road somebody's going to come and take away one of the properties from 1, 2, and 3, since there's a possibility that that happens, and if that happens, halacha according to Benanis is that we will not take it away from number 4, so then number 4 needs to swear before she collects her ksuva, just like 1, 2, and 3, because just like 1, 2, and 3 swear because they affect the other wives, so too number 4 ultimately can possibly affect the other wives, if this case would happen, and therefore, according to Benanis, she needs to swear when she collects her ksuva as well. Amar Rav Nachman, Amar Rabba Baravua. Rav Nachman adds something, and he says, no. Dekule ama masha gava lo gava. That in general, when somebody collects something, it's not theirs forever. And therefore, even if number 4 would collect it, we can maybe take it away from her. If we can maybe take it away from her, then really, she should not need to take a shvua when she takes her property. Then why exactly does Benanis say that number 4 needs to swear? V'hacha b'chayshinan shema tachsif kamifli. Because they're arguing about something else. Mar savar chayshinan shema tachsif. Mar says, Benana says we're worried that she's going to neglect the property. Umar savar lo chashinan shema tachsif, and the other Mar says that we're not worried that she's going to neglect the property. What does this mean? So now number 4 is going to get the property. So now she knows that there's a possibility that this whole shtick is going to happen, and that somebody's going to take 1, 2, and 3. And there's a possibility, or a good possibility, let's say, especially if she has a husband that she knows is a little bit shady, which may be why she didn't marry him. But if she marries number 4, so now she marries a guy. So at the end of the day, she knows that it's possible that 1, 2, and 3 are going to lose their property, and they're going to come away and take it from her. So now if they're going to take it away from her, so now what's she going to do with this property? She's going to use it while she has it, but she's not going to be so careful with it, as opposed to if she knew that it was hers to keep, so then she would be much more careful with it. So Benanis says that even though the halacha is that when we go ahead and mashagava lo gava, even though when we go ahead and we say mashagava lo gava, that we're going to take it away from her, in order to prevent her from now neglecting the property, we're going to make her swear and make sure that she actually deserves a ksuva. Now she deserves a ksuva. She'll at least watch it over, because again, she took a swear. Maybe she figures that once she has, again, it's not exactly clear what the svar is. Maybe she figures once she has a swear, there's a better possibility that she'll keep it, even though that's not necessarily true. But it's just sort of like, once she swears and she went through the effort to have to get it, so even though she might lose it, she'll be a lot more careful. But if she just gets it stam, and there's a good possibility she's going to lose it, then she's not going to be so careful. So that's why Benanis says Eina Hanami, Masha Gava Lo Gava. That really number 4 is not swearing because ultimately they might take it away from her. She's swearing so that it'll become a little bit more important to her. If it becomes a little bit more important to her, then the fact that they might take it away from her will not stop her from watching over and not neglecting the property. So that's where this machlokas comes. Aryai goes totally different, and Aryai says no. This whole machlok is about number 4 swearing or not swearing, and nothing to do with whether the fact that they might take away the property from her or might not take away the property from her. What does it have to do with? When Benanis and Tanakama are arguing whether number 4 needs to swear or not. It has to do with the machlokes of Abaye Kashisha. Titani Abaye Kashisha Yisomim Sha'amru Gidol and Vein Tarach Lomar Ketanim. Abaye Kashisha holds that in general, Lamaisa, anytime you take away anything from the Yisomim, so you need to go ahead and you need to take a shvua. Tanakama Leslie Abaye Kashisha. So Tanakama, who says that number 4 doesn't need to swear, he doesn't hold of Abaye Kashisha, and therefore you can go ahead and you can take away from the Yisomim, which is what number 4 is doing in essence. You can go ahead and take it without a shvua. Benanis Islay Devayi Kashisha. Benanis will tell you that even if we would say that she shouldn't have to swear because she doesn't affect the other woman, or we should say that she doesn't need to swear, right, because Masha Gava Lo Gava. At the end of the day, he throws up his hand and says, L'maisa, what do you want me to do? Even though I don't have a good svara why she should have to swear, I have my hands tied behind my back. I have no choice why she needs to swear, because L'maisa, I hold to this rule that anytime you collect from a Yisoma, now the wife, again, this is interesting because, again, we're talking about a husband who dies. If the husband would divorce, then this wouldn't apply. But a husband who dies, so then you have no choice. We have another separate rule, says Benanis, that anybody who takes from a Yisoma, anybody who takes from a Yorshim has to swear, and therefore, even though you're right in Svara, maybe you can argue that number 4 should not have to swear, because Lamaisa, worst case scenario, we're going to go ahead and we're going to take it away from her. Lamaisa, she needs to swear, because we have this separate rule of anybody who takes from a Yisoma needs to swear. Fine. That's it. Okay, let's go weiter. Let's go to an interesting story. Time for stories. Fine. Amar Afuna. Hani Trey Achi. This is very Lamaisa, but we're not going to pass in Lamaisa from here. There are 2 Yorshim who are brothers. Utrei Shutfe. Anybody here have a partner in business? And 2 partners in business. To Islu Bidina Bahadechad. And they have a Beis Din. They're taken to Beis Din. They're sued by a third party. So one of the 2 partners goes to Beis Din and he represents the 2 partners against his guy, and now unfortunately they lose the suit. So he can't say, quote, you are not my Baal Devarim. He can't say after the fact, I didn't really trust you. When you went, you weren't representing me as well, and therefore, yes, you lost the suit, so you pay your half of the suit. And me, I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to go defend myself for my half of the suit against this guy. I'm going to go back to court with him. And he can't say that. Why? Because we assume that when one partner went to court, he was representing the other partner as well. Ikla Rav Nachman L'Sura. Rav Nachman went to Surah Shiluye. They asked him, Ki Gav Namai. They asked him, Lamaisa, what's the halach in this case? Does the second partner have a taina that he wanted to defend himself and therefore he doesn't have to pay his half and he needs to go to court and defend himself now? Amar Lahu Masnisan. It's a Mishnah. Harishon Nishbeis Shniyo Shniyo Lishlishitz Lishlishitz L'Revius Vila Rishona Lishlishitz L'Kitani. We see that the first is swearing for the second and the second for the third and the third for the fourth, but one is not swearing for 3. What does that imply? That really one is swearing for everyone we know. Lamaisa, when one is swearing that she didn't collect her ksuva, but she's swearing for everybody. What does it mean she swears for 2? She swears for 2 because 2 is next in line, but Lamaisa, 2 is representing 3 and 4, and she's really swearing for all of them. It's clear that when she swears, she's swearing to number 2, but really number 2 is representing 3 and 4. So too, when this partner goes to Beis, and he's going for himself, but Lamaisa, he's representing the other partner as well. Says the Gemara, no. Midami, you can't compare the 2 cases, because Hasam, Shvuah La'echad, Shvuah L'Meya. In that case, it's not that number 1 is swearing to number 2, and 2 is representing 3 and 4. Lamaisa, number 1 is taking a Shvuah. It happens to be that the Gemara says that it most affects number 2, because number 2 is next in line. But Lamaisa, when number 1 takes a Shvuah, he's taking a Shvuah. And he would be taking a Shvuah not for number 2, not for number 3, not for number 4. He's taking a Shvuah, she's taking a Shvuah that she didn't collect the Ksuva. However, in this case, hacha, maybe this case is different. Maybe in this case, he should be able to taina, because Amar, maybe he should say, Ilu ana hava, if I was there, ta'ina na tvei. I would have been a better arguer than you. I would have been able to prevent us from losing the suit. So the Gemara says, V'lo Amran. We don't say that, Ela de lo aise b'masa. Aval aise b'masa, barile l'maise. It's very interesting. The Gemara actually gives in, and the Gemara says, you're right. If the guy wasn't in town, and what does that imply? That he wasn't in town, or he didn't know about it, or he threw up his hands beforehand, and he actually said, I want to go defend myself, so Eina Chanami. In that case, if the guy loses the suit, so then Eina Chanami, he can go ahead and he can go and say, I don't want to pay my half, I want to go to Beis Din and defend myself. But if the guy's in town, if the guy clearly knew about the case, if the guy had his partner go, and it was clear to everyone, or pretty clear to everyone, that the guy had a choice whether he wanted to go or not, and he chose not to go, he had the second guy go for him, so then Lamais, at the end of the day, he can't throw up his arms after the case is over and say, I would have done it differently. That's what the Gemara means. He's in town, he's out of town. He's in town, and it was clear that he didn't want to defend himself, he didn't care enough, he didn't go, he sent his partner, then clearly when they lose the suit, he needs to pay his half as well. But if he's out of town, or he doesn't know about it, or it's clear that he would have put up his hands, and if he had a choice, he would have defended himself, so then Eina Chanami, when the guy loses the suit, so yes, this partner lost the suit, he needs to pay his half, but Lamaisa, this partner who would have defended himself, who was out of town, who didn't know about it, so Eina Chanami, he has a taina that says, I can go ahead to Beis now, and I can defend myself for the 50% of the suit that we lost.
Why wouldn't Beis make it a standard situation that when someone comes, you say, do you have a shutta? Represent him?
So they could, but who said that what this guy's saying is telling the truth? Not every partner is best friend. So now Lamaisa, I'm going to come and I'm going to say, oh, the shutta said that he was representing me. Lamaisa, I never told him to represent me. So it's hard to just say, especially...
Change the date so they're both available.
Again, easier said than done. Itmar, especially if you're getting sued, so you try not to be in town as much as possible.
You have a written declaration.
Itmar, you're never in town. Somehow the guy's never in town. Itmar, right? These guys who travel, you should be wary of the guys who are always traveling. Itmar, beish shtaros hayotzim biyom echad. So now we have another interesting machlokas. You have two shtaros that come in one day. Rav amar cholkin u'shmuel amar shuda dedaine. Very fascinating machlokas. So you have two stars that come in one day. Right, we both come and we both have a star that we bought this property. Reuben and Shimon both produce a star with the same date that Levi sold them a property. So now they both want the property. So Rav Amar Cholkin. So Rav says, Amaisa, we have two staros with the same date. Again, if they had hours on them, like Yerushalayim, if there were different dates, and then we give it to whoever's first. But if they have the same date, and we don't know which one's first because there's no hours, and we don't know which one he wrote it to first, so then at the end of the day, we say you have to split the property, we have no choice. We're going to have a pshara. Shmuel Amar, Shuda Dedaini. Shmuel says, no, Shuda Dedaini. It's up to the Dayanim. Very fascinating svar. What does it mean it's up to the Dayanim? The Dayanim sit there and say, well, it depends what kind of deal it was. If they look at the document and say, wow, the guy got a really good deal, so then the Dayanim are going to say, well, we know that Levi likes Reuven better. It must be that even though he wrote two documents, it must be that he really wanted to give Reuven the deal, and therefore the Dayanim can decide that they want to give the deal to Reuven. And if they look at the document and say, wow, the guy really got ripped off, it must be that Levi was picking on the guy that he doesn't like, Shimon. So then he can look at it and say, okay, it belongs to Shimon. So Shuda Dedaine, the Dayanim, Beis Din decides, based on their intellect, based on their gut really, who they feel Levi would have most likely sold the property to. And again, maybe depending on whether it was a good deal or a bad deal, but in general, Beis Din gets to decide who they thought that Levi would have sold it to, and based on that, they either give the property to Reuven or to Shimon, as opposed to the first opinion, Rav, who says that they split it. So what's this machlokes based on? So Lema Rav Damar Rabbi Meir Damar. Now that gets a little bit confusing. We're going to try to make it as simple as possible, but this is not an easy Gemara. So Rav says like Rabbi Meir. That's the suggestion. What does Rabbi Meir say? Eide Chasima Karte. That when people sign, all we care about is who signed on the document, as opposed to what? Ushmuel Damar Rabbi Elazar Damar Eide Mesira Karte. So there's a machlokes that when you have a star, so do we care about the people that sign it, or do we care about the people that give it over? If you say Eide Chasima Karte, that means that as soon as it's signed, it takes effect. And if one get is signed before the next one, so then the one that was signed first would take effect first. And the one who says Eide Mesira Karti seemingly would say, even if the get is not signed, at the end of the day, the important thing is that the star is when the star or the get is given over, and whichever one is given over first is the one that takes effect first. So now you have two staros in front of you. You have two staros, and both of the staros have the same day. So the question becomes, how do we figure this out? So the Gemara is suggesting that Rav, who says Cholkin, would hold like Rabbi Meir. He would hold like Rabbi Meir and say, Eide Chasima Karte. That all we care about is what's in the document. What's in the document? Lamaisa, in the document are two documents that have the same exact date. If all we care about is what's in the document, so then it's possible that one wrote it before the other. It's possible that one wrote it in the morning and one wrote it in the afternoon. But at the end of the day, all that we care about is Lamaisa, what's in the document. And what's in the document right now says that both of them were signed on the same day, and therefore we have no choice but to do Cholkin. Eide Ksiva Karti. All we care about is the signatures of the Eidim. Here we have two documents with signatures of Eidim with the same exact date. We have no choice but to say Chok, and that's why Rav holds like Rabbi Meir. What about Shmuel, who says Shuda Dedaine, that the Dayanim, that Beis Din needs to decide and give it to one or the other? Why would they hold that? Because they hold Eide Mesira Karte. They hold that we don't care what's in the document in front of us. We care about who got it first. And Lamaisa, you need to say that one of them got it first. Which one got it first? I have no idea. They were both written the same day. We don't care. Lamaisa, one of them must have gotten it. We used the date in the document. We use the date in the document to prove when it happened, because one can argue this all the time. One can argue that, yes, I have a document that says Aleph Nisan, and you have a document that says Tes Nisan, and now it's ER, so I can argue, yes, yours says Aleph Nisan, but the Tes Nisan one was given to me first. So that's not what we do in general. In general, we use a document to tell us a date. But if the dates are the same, then we're going to go ahead and say Eide Mesira Karte. We're going to say, in general, the ones who give it over, whoever gets it first is more important. Okay, we use the date just to confirm that one of them got it before the other, and we assume that you got it the same date that it was written on the document. But Lamaisa, now you have two documents that both say the same date. So now we assume we don't know who got it first, but if you say that we don't care about the dates in the ksuva, in the document, we care but we don't care, in the sense that that's not the main part, we just care who got it first, so you have to assume that one of them was handed the document first. He didn't go like this. He gave one first and then he gave the next one. Who that is, we don't know. But one of them definitely got it first. So the Dayanim come, again, it's a little bit complicated, but I think I'm trying to explain it clearly. The Dayanim come and try to decide who it probably was that got the document first. If you say Eide Ksiva Dami, if you say Eide Chasima Karti, that all we care about is not who got it first, but who signed first. Well, the Maisa, all we can do now is analyze the documents. And the documents in front of us have the same exact date. If they have the same exact date, we have no choice but to say Cholkin. That's the machlokes between Rav and Shmuel according to this. Rav says, like Rabbi Meir, that Eide Chasima Karti, all we care about is those that signed. If all we care about is those that signed, we look at two identical documents in front of us and we have no choice but to Cholkin. And if Shmuel says like Rabbi Elazar, that we care about what's signed, but all that we really care about at the end of the day is who was it given to first, you must say that it was given to one of them first. So why don't you say you must say that one of them was signed first? Because at the end of the day, we don't care if one of them was signed first. At the end of the day, if they were signed on the same exact day, even if one was signed in the morning and one was signed in the afternoon, if you say Eide Chasima Karti, so then Einachanami, it's possible that we're going to say that the one who got in the afternoon would actually get it. Again, if we have witnesses that are watching and say that this one definitely got it first, so then one can maybe argue. But since we don't have witnesses and the main part is the signatures, so then on the same exact date, we're going to have no choice but to Cholkin. If it's based on when was given over, then the Dayanim have to use their intellect and have to use their gut to feel who Levi would have given it over to first. That's what the Svar of the Gemara seems to be.
The bigger problem comes if you have two shluchim that gave it over at the exact same time.
Right. That would be a problem. Now we have a bigger problem. That you're considering that Rav holds like the Kulei Amma Rabbi Elazar. Sorry, I skipped a line. Nobody realized. Second line. Lo. The Kulei Amma Rabbi Elazar. No. Really, everybody holds that Eide Mesira Karti. All we care about is who gave it over. We don't know who gave it over, but you clearly gave it over to one of them. So who's this a problem? And this is a problem with Rav. Why would Rav say Cholkin if we say that Eide Mesira Karti? That all we care about is who got it first. V'hacha b'haka mifligi. Rav savar chaluka adifa. Ushmuel savar shuda dedain adifa. No. So now we're making a suggestion that forget about Eide Chasima, Eide Mesira. All we care about is who got it first. If all we care about is who got it first, so we have two documents that have the same date, but Lamaisa, all we care about is who got it first. One of them must have got it first. So Rav will say to you, I don't care. Still, Lamaisa, we don't know who got it first, and therefore Cholkin. But according to Shmuel, no, one of them got it first. So we're better off taking a guess at least, or taking our gut feeling, because at least then there's a good chance that the right one will get it. Because the way that you're saying, Rav, the wrong one is definitely getting a piece of it. And the right one is not getting the whole thing. So it's like, right, yeah, and you have to think about this. Anytime you end up saying Cholkin, something like this, anytime you end up having a pshara, where you end up coming to a settlement, so yes, both of them are getting it, because we don't know what to do, but that means that that means the real one is not getting it, and the wrong one's not getting what they deserve. The wrong one is getting half more than he should be getting, and the right one is getting half less than he should be getting. So that's what Cholkin, 50-50. So Shmuel will say to you, we're better off, and I'd rather take a chance, again, not just I'd rather take an educated guess that the right one is getting 100% and the wrong one, and I'm willing to take the chance that the right one is getting 0 and the wrong one's getting 100%. I'd rather take a chance than know for sure that I did the wrong thing. That's the machlokes. Rav says I'd rather at least give the guy who deserves it half. And Shmuel says, no, I'd rather take a chance that the guy who deserves it get the whole thing, even if it means that there's a small possibility that the guy who deserves it gets nothing. That's the machlokes. Rav savar chaluka adifa, u'Shmuel savar shuda dedaini adifa. U'mimatzis mok mislei l'Rav Kerbelazar. The problem is that according to this second suggestion that everybody holds Eidei Masira Karti, we have a little bit of a problem. Because Ha'amar Rav Yehuda Amar Rav, because Rav, you're suggesting now that even Rav who says Chokin is working within Rabbi Elazar who says Eidei Masira Karti, but we know that Rav says Halacha Kerbelazar begitten. That the halacha is like Rabbi Elazar by get, that Eidei Masira is Karti, Ki Amrita, Kamei de Shmuel Amar Af Bishtaros, and Shmuel says even by Shtaros, but that implies Miklal de Rav Savar b'shtaros lo. This is a case of shtaros and not gittin, and it implies that by Rav would hold not like Rabbi Elazar by shtaros, and that really by shtaros he would hold Eidei Chasima Karti. Ela mechaver to Rav Rabbi Meir, Shmuel Rabbi Elazar. Therefore, we go back to what we said before, and Rav holds like Rabbi Meir, and when Rav says Chokin, it's because he holds Eidei Chasima Karti, and we have two documents that are exactly the same. Two documents that are exactly the same, and all we care about is what's on the documents. We have no choice but to split it. And Shmuel, who holds that we go based on whatever Beis Din determines, whoever is the rightful owner, that's based on Eidei Masira Karti. We all can only care about who got the document first. Lamaisa, one of them would have gotten it first, and therefore we're willing to take the chance by saying who our gut tells us the seller would have sold it to. Meisve, we have a separate brisa that has a shaila now. Shnei shtaros hayotzim biyom echad chokin. We see clearly that two shtaros that have the same date on them, so we see that we split it. Who does that go like? That goes like Rav, because Rav says that in this case, you go ahead and you split it to Yufta de Shmuel, Amar l'cha Shmuel, Hamani Rabbi Meir he, V'anadar Mekir Rabbi Elazar. No, that brisa which says Chokin is Rabbi Meir, but I hold like Rabbi Elazar, and I would hold Shuda Dedaini just like Rabbi Elazar. The Gemara says it's a little bit of a problem. If you suggest that this brisa is like Rabbi Meir, because Rabbi Meir holds Eidei Chasima Karti, and Rabbi Meir holds Eidei Chasima Karti, therefore Chokin, like we've been saying all along. The problem is at the end of the thing clearly says like Rabbi Elazar, Kasav la'echad u'masar la'acher. If he writes one document first and then the next document, but the one that's dated later is given over to the guy first, Zeshem Asalokana, the one that he gave it over to first, even though the document is dated later, the guy who he gave it to first gets it because Eidei Masira Karti. V'yi Rabbi Meir amai kana ha'amar Eidei Chasima Karti. Tanai no. So this whole thing is a machlokes kanaim. The whole thing is a machlokes, and it's a separate machlokes. The Tanya. Again, just building up what we said until now. There's a case, what's that case? So Rashi tells us that there's a case in Gittin where somebody sends $100 to another person. And the guy goes, the shliach gets to the guy's house, he knocks on the door, and they say, I'm sorry, he's not home. He's not home. When will he be back? He won't be back. He's dead. So the shliach has the $100 from A, he sends it to B, and B died. So now he goes, what's he going to do? He's going to take the money back to A. So he goes back to A, and unfortunately, A is now dead. So now the question becomes, what do you do with the money? Well, if A was still alive, so then you would just give it back to A. Because now A can go ahead and he can decide if he really wanted to give it to B's Yorshim or not. But now that B is dead, and now you bring it back to A, so now the shliach's sort of like stuck. What do I do? Do I assume that A, when he sent me, wanted me to give the money to B? And if B was dead, do I assume now that he would have wanted me to give it to B's kids? Or do I assume that he was dafka sending it to B because he liked B, but he would have never wanted B's kids to have the money, and therefore I have to give it back to A's family? So the Chachamim say, we don't know Yachloku, and that's similar to, again, Rabbi Meir and Rav that says Cholkin. And over here, Kan Amru, the second opinion is Mashi Yirtza Shlish Yaseh. Seemingly he can't keep it for himself. But whatever the guy wants to do, he does. That means that the shliach takes his gut, and he works based on his gut, the way that it was given over to him. What the mishaleach, what the sender said when he said it. Now the shliach needs to work on his gut, and he needs to figure out, would the mishaleach want me now to give it to the Yorshim, or would he want it to go back to his house? And based on whatever his gut is, that's how he decides whether he gives it now to B's Yorshim, or he gives it back now to A's Yorshim. But again, we see the same achlokas here, whether Shuda de Daine, and it's interesting because even though here he's not a Dayan, but it's the same svara. Whether Shuda de Daine, we go based on the guy's gut, or Lamaisa Yachloku, because we have no idea. Story time.
Why don't you say you should give it to the BAYT and let the BAYT deal with it?
So again, it sounds that Masha Yirtza Shlish Yaseh, one can argue, see Rashi says Hainu Shliach, but maybe one can argue that if you're going to hold really Shuda de Daine, that it's Dafka the Dayanim, as we'll see in the story in a second, then one would argue that the Shlish would just be the third party, and one can argue that that's Beis Din, but again, they'll have to decide whether they want to give it to A or B's family, but Lamai said not Cholkin. Rav says Cholkin. Ime de Rami Barchama Kazvinu Lenichsa Rami Barchama Besafras. We have story. So Rami Barchama's mother wrote all of the Nechasim to Rami Barchama in the morning. Unfortunately, Rami Bar Chama got into trouble in school that day, and La'orsa Kasvinu Lamar Ukva Bar Chama. So when he came home at night, he said, not only did he said, I got in trouble in school, he said, okay, inheritance is gone, no longer yours, and now she goes ahead and she writes it to his brother, Mar Ukva. So Asa Rami Bar Chama Lakami Derav Sheshes, Okme Ben Echsa. So now it sounds like the mother must have died, and now they both have shtaros that say that they got that they're supposed to inherit. So now Rami Bar Chama comes before Ram Sheshet and he gives him the nechasim because Lamaisa his was done first in the morning. Asa Mar Ukva Lakami Derav Nachman Okme Ben Echsa. So Mar Ukva comes before Rav Nachman and he gets it and he gives it to him. Also, Rav Sheshet Lakamei de Rav Nachman. So Rav Sheshet comes before Rav Nachman. Amalei, my time Avid Marhachi. Why would you give it to the second guy? Amalei, my time Avid Marhachi. Why would you give it to the first guy? Amalei dekadim, because the first guy was first. Rami Rachama was first. Amalei atu Yerushalayim Yasminan dechazvinan shos. Are we in Yerushalayim where there are shos? There's no shos on the document. You're right. If there were shos, and this is interesting. This goes based on what we said before. It sounds like even with Eidim, we don't care if it's dated on the same day. So it sounds like you're right. If we were in Yerushalayim and she wrote to him 9 a.m. on the star, and then in the afternoon she wrote 5 p.m. and she got upset at him while he was in school, too bad, too late. But Lamaisa now, even though we know she wrote it to him in the morning and she wrote it to the brother in the afternoon, Lamaisa, both of them are in front of us, and what do they have? They have two stars that have the same exact date on them. If they have the same exact date on them, then what do we do with it? If we have the same exact date on them, so then we go ahead and it depends on what you hold. Either you hold Cholkin, or you hold Shuda Dedaine. So the Gemara says, Elamai my tama avid hachi, Amar le Shuda Dedaine. So he says Shuda Dedaine. So he answers, why did I give it to the second guy? Because I assume, again, it wasn't such a bad assumption. Once she wrote it to the second guy in the afternoon, it was clear that her intentions were to give it over to the second guy. Shuda Dedaine, my gut tells me, or even more than my gut tells me, that she wanted to give it to the second brother. Therefore, I'm giving it to the second brother. Amar le Ananami Shuda Dedaine. So he said, no. My gut tells me that even though she got upset at him, Lamaisa, at the end of the day, she really wanted to give it to him. And that's why she gave it to him first in the morning. And she was just upset at him, so she gave it to the second brother. But my gut tells me, Amar le Chad, he says two things. He says to him, De'ana Daina Amar Lav Daina. Very nice, you want to say Shuda de Daine, but Lamaisa, he says to him, the first guy, he says to Rav Nachman, he says to Rav Sheshes, very nice, you want to say Shuda de Daina, there's only one problem, you're not a Dayan. And therefore you don't have the right to choose that you want to give it to Rami Bar Chama, because Shuda de Daine is only meant for Dayanim. That's the first thing that he says to Rav Sheshes. And the second thing that Rav Nachman says to Rav Sheshes is, come on, man, you're changing your svara. Ve'od me'ikar la b'toras hachi asule. Very nice, now you're claiming that the reason you gave it to the first guy was because of Shuda de Daine. That's not really why you gave it to the first guy. Really, you gave it to the first guy because you thought that when a star is written on the same day as somebody else, whichever star was written first, that's the guy who gets it. But that's not the halacha. The halacha is that if it's written in the same day, unless it has hours in it, we treat the one that was written in the morning like the one that was written in the afternoon. And therefore, for those two reasons, he said, I'm going to award it to number two. A, because Shuda de Daine, I have a right to award it to whoever I wanted to, you don't. And second of all, because you're not a Dayan. And second of all, even if you did, the Maisa, that wasn't your svara. You had a mistaken svara, and therefore, at the end of the day, we're going to give it to Mar Ukva Bar Chama. Let's just finish to the Mishnah. Another story. Difficult story, but we'll try to make it clear. Hanu tre shtare de asu lekame de Rav Yosef. There were two shtaros which came before Rav Yosef. And both of them are claiming that, or both of them say in them that they bought a piece of property, and they bought the same piece of property. One of them was written and had the date on it, the 5th of Nisan. One of them was left blank. It was left, the date is blank b'Nisan. So now what do? Did the guy on the 5th of Nisan, and it doesn't matter if it was the 5th of Nisan or the 14th of Nisan seemingly, well, he wouldn't have bought it on the 14th of Nisan, but the 5th of Nisan or blank of Nisan. So now they're both saying, I want the property. So who gets the property? So they go at V'chad V'kasa B'ib Nisan Slama Okmei Rav Yosef Lahu Dechamisha B'Nisan B'Nechasim. So obviously I need to give it to the one that says the 5th of Nisan, because it's very possible, yes, it's possible you had 1, 2, 3, 4, but it's very possible you had after the 5th of Nisan. Now, again, I don't know, because I didn't see all the Rishonim, but it doesn't sound to me like this is a din of probability. I'm not sure though. Like if the first one said the 20th of Nisan, I think it would be the same halacha.
What about the 15th?
No, you think that it wouldn't be the same halacha? You think that because it's...
Look at divide 30.
Is that how the Gemara is learning? I don't know. It doesn't seem... Well, I don't know. The Gemara is not going to talk about it. So the Gemara is not going to mention, unfortunately. But one can learn that it's dafka the 5th of Nisan because the chances of your star being 1, 2, 3, or 4 are very small. Or one can argue that even if mine said the 27th of Nisan, I would still get it because Lamaisa, yours doesn't have a date and you can't come ahead and take something unless you're certain that your date, because yours could very possibly be the 28th or 29th. So that's what? No, it happened. We assume that it happened, as we'll see in the Gemara. But again, we're working on the assumption that the date doesn't necessarily make a difference.
It's only like a 16% chance.
Again, okay, 16%. I forgot to do the math beforehand. Fine. So the Gemara says that he gives it to the guy that says Chamisha b'Nisan. He said, Lamaisa, what do you want me to do with the star? Now I have a star that says I bought this property and I'm not getting anything because Lamaisa I'm stuck. You're giving it to the guy with the 5th b'Nisan. What do I do with the star? Sorry, man, you're in the dark. You got nothing I can do for you. Ema barchaf test b'Nisanat, because we have to assume, and again, based on this lashon, we have to assume that you're the 29th. Then I would think that they would say the same svara, even if the other guy had the 28th. We have to assume the worst. That's what he says. That's just the way that I learned it. We have to assume the worst, and this could have very possibly been the 29th. And especially, I don't know if it's a din of motzi mechaver al avraya, because again, neither one of them is holding the property now. They both want to get it. So at the end of the day, we have to assume the worst. So yours is the 29th, and I'm sorry, we need to give it to the guy that has the 5th of Nisan. Amar levin nichtov li mar tirfa. So he says, at least do me a favor and write me a tirfa me'iyar ve'elach. What's he asking for? So he's saying, at least do me a favor, and at least go ahead and let me collect properties that were sold in ER. I understand that I can't beat this guy who has a Nissan star. But let's say now that the seller sold other properties afterwards to ER. I clearly bought something from the seller. The star says that I bought something. Unfortunately, it says that I bought the same thing that this guy bought, and he's going to get it. But that doesn't mean that my star's not good. Lamaisa, I paid him money, and therefore, if he's going to get this property, then really I should be owed another property. So he says, at the very least, even though I understand that I can't collect this property, because his says the 5th of Nisan and mine says blank Nisan, but at least do me a favor and let me go ahead and collect the one that was sold in ER. Because now when somebody bought it on the 2nd day of ER, I should be able to go to him and say, Lamaisa, it doesn't matter what day in Nisan I paid for it. This property was in Nisan. Lamaisa, my sale was in Nisan. And therefore, the property that you now took was clearly sold to me first. There's only one problem. When you go to the guy who bought it in ER, the problem is that he could send you back and say, no, this property belongs to me, and you very possibly bought it in 1, 2, 3, or 4 of Nisan, and therefore go to number A and tell him that you want his property. So number A is going to send you to number C, and number C is going to send you to number A, and you, number B, is going to be stuck. Because when you go to the guy from ER and say, Lamaisa, my star says Nisan, so no matter when you bought it, Lamaisa, I bought it first, but at the end of the day, he's going to say, no, you don't get from me, you get from the guy who bought it after you in Nisan, because you bought it on 1, 2, 3, or 4 of Nisan. And when you go to the guy who says 1, 2, 3, or 4 of Nisan, when you go to the guy who has the 5th of Nisan and say, here's my star for Nisan, you say, no, come on, man, you bought it after the 5th of Nisan, go to that guy. And they're going to keep sending each other back to each other, and number B is going to be stuck. That's what they say.
But if the guy who had the 5th of Nisan had the 1st of Nisan, then he could make that argument with ER.
Interesting. Okay, possibly. So my takante. So what's the takana? Do we have any svar for this guy? So actually, yes. Nichtivu harsha'a lehadade. You know what he should do? He's got to go to and become friends with number A. He's got to send number A a nice set of flowers before Shabbos, and he's got to say to A, do me a favor. I'm not going to argue with you. You got your property. But do me a favor and at least give me your star. Give me your paper. How's that going to help? Well, now what's he going to do? Now he's going to go and he's going to go to C. He's going to go to the guy that bought it in ER. He's going to say, here's my star from Nissan. Give me the property that you bought in ER. He's saying, don't do that. Go ahead and you got to go take from number A. So he'll say, okay, fine. I already spoke to number A. Ha ha. I'm going to go take number A's property, but now I have number A's star, and I'm collecting on behalf of number A your property, because you bought it in ER. So no matter how you dice it, he says, yes, you could send me to A, and A could send me to you. But if me and A are on the same team, then at the end of the day, the two of us definitely get it before you. So C can send to A, and A can send to C, but C cannot send B to A if B has A and B as well. Because regardless of which property I should be getting as B, Lamaisa, there's only two properties here, and Lamaisa, both I, B, and A, both bought our properties in Nissan, and therefore at the end of the day, if he gets the star from A, and he gets A on his team, if he gets A on board, so now B can go to C and say, give me the property. Because Memanashach, either way, either you're going to give me a hard time and say you don't want to give me the property because I should have A's property, so then fine, give me your property for A. And if he says, no, you're not going to get A's property, so then, okay, in Achanami, I deserve your property, and therefore A and B are happy, and C is not. Have a wonderful day, everyone.